Love podcasts, hate nonsense. It's the PoliticsJOE podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
I was looking at Laura's because she just sent me something and I was replying to her like,
She didn't want to interrupt the flow of the podcast.
No.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. How are you? Okay, professional.
Yes, I have a laptop for today's episode.
Yeah?
For reasons I won't discuss. Comment the reasons you think below.
Yeah.
You're on Sky today?
Why would you bring that up? It's none of their business.
You're right. Any time not spent consuming PoliticsJOE content is a moment wasted.
Yeah.
And we don't need to give Sky News any plugs.
Well, no, again, that's not the line we were going to take.
What was the line we're going to take?
Silence.
Silence and violence.
How are you, golden boy?
Thank you. That comes from in the office about 10 minutes ago. One of you called me golden boy, and I went, no one calls me that anymore. And you suggested it was something to do with my performance.
Yeah, that's my favourite mug.
This wee one.
Yeah,
Nice.
I love that mug. It's annoying that you have that mug.
Would you like it?
Well, no, not now that you've put your lips all over it.
Okay. Should we also just if anyone's new, you're Ava Santina.
Thanks.
I'm Ed Campbell. This is PoliticsJOE reacts to PMQs, where we react to PMQs.
Yeah.
I've decided I'm going to be hyper aware in case anyone has never listened to this before.
Yeah? You think we're bringing in new people?
I think so. Someone commented saying I started listening to the podcast 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, there was someone who commented yesterday on Monday who was talking about how I was a disgraceful right-winger. And I was like...
So they've listened to every
They've
single
listened to all of them.
that's a die-hard fan. Shall we jump right into PMQs?
Let's leap in.
Go.
Should we dive?
One.
What are you doing?
My thing.
Yeah, Illuminati, yeah?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, roll clip.
Mr. Speaker, I'm privileged to be the proud owner of a copy of the former Prime Minister's new book. It's a rare, unsigned copy. It's the only unsigned copy. It's quite the read. She claims the Tory party's disastrous kamikaze budget that triggered chaos for millions was, her words, the happiest moment of her premiership. Has the Prime Minister met anyone with a mortgage who agrees?
Well, Mr. Speaker, all I'd say is he ought to spend a bit less time reading that book and a bit more time reading the Deputy Leader's tax advice.
I think we'll have less talking. I want to get through PMQs. Here's Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, we've got a billionaire Prime Minister and a billionaire Prime Minister, both of whose families have used schemes to avoid millions of pounds of tax, smearing a working-class woman. And the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, has a long list of people to blame for the economic misery. They don't want to hear it. They made her Prime Minister, and millions of people are paying the price.
Yeah, so that's Keir Starmer there, talking about Liz Truss, who has been out and about over the past couple of days promoting her new book and talking about how she'd do it all again if she got the opportunity, and she's not ruling out running for leader again.
She's the O.J. Simpson of Conservative politics.
Because she didn't do it?
Again.
Oh, sorry. She didn't do it.
Because she did do it, and she'd do it again, and it's written a book.
Oh, he's dead now, isn't he?
Yeah, you can say things like that.
Oh, finally, now we can say what we were all thinking.
What everyone's been thinking for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was asking, Sunak about the disastrous tax cuts, and he was saying that, has anyone with a mortgage forgotten how bad it felt at the time? And Sunak replied to that with, I think he should spend a little bit less time reading Liz Truss's book and more time reading Angela Rayner's tax advice.
I have a few questions about that. Mm-hmm. Is he so Sunak,
He's suggesting you can
as a
only read
very
one
wealthy-
thing at a time.
as a very wealthy man, he might be interested in learning how to pay less capital gains tax.
Yeah.
So he's hopeful that Angela Rayner maybe has a pamphlet or something that he can read up on.
I'm not being funny. There's no world in which Sunak is trying to recoup £1,500. I mean, the man has like a £400 coffee holder
Yep.
that keeps his tea at a temperate, temperate temperature.
An appropriate temperature.
Actually, a temperate temperature. It's sentient.
It's that he's got a sentient cup holder. What the fuck?
No.
It's just a boy. He just has a boy to keep.
You know, like the Romans when they used to fan, they had men downstairs fanning flames like this.
Wine pourers.
Yeah.
Just beautiful teenagers holding warming cups for you.
Yeah. They sort of dangle down, like, the gardens of Babylon and feed him like grapes.
Yeah. That'd be sick. Would you respect him more or less if that was the case?
Would I respect him if he had a lot of teenage boys in his office feeding him grapes?
Yes.
Right. Okay, Gary Glitter.
You've not denied it.
Huh?
You don't handle these hypotheticals terribly well.
What was the last one?
It was, who's the worst person? Osama bin Laden or Miriam Gates? And you went, I am not answering that.
Yeah.
I thought was quite illustrative in this PMQ's first one back after a month, and everyone just came out and they're like, well, I've got one thing. This is my one thing I've been thinking about all break, and this is it. So the answer to the question about Liz Truss is actually just incoherent as a bit of conversation about being like, have you spoken to someone on the doorstep? Read something else. Just totally incoherent as a bit, as a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, when you put it like that, that would be like if I came in one morning and I was like, oh, have you read the new Sally Rooney?
Have I read the new Sally Rooney?
And then-
I think you should ask your friend about the drug habit.
I should.
Yep. It's completely incoherent, but they just mainlining the one message they want to get out.
Yeah. Keir Starmer came back to that with the response that Angela Rayner is a working class girl and Sunak. And he actually said there are two people, Sunak, and he said someone else. And I played it back time and time again. And I couldn't hear it. He might have said former Prime Minister, I'm not sure, who had been avoiding millions of pounds of tax. And I suppose, yeah, you could point towards Nadeem Zahawi, who got in trouble for his tax affairs. And then you could point towards Sunak's wife, who was a non-dom and was, legally loopholing tax, a loophole that's now been closed. You could point towards them and say, this is sort of the whole argument around tax and benefits, isn't it? Is that HMRC tends to go for the people at the bottom of the scale. They're like, this person hasn't paid £100 here, this person hasn't paid £200 here. And then you've got the people at the top who are creaming it.
They're creaming their jeans when that happens. That was quite astute from Keir Starmer to try and just making the point about attaching Liz Truss to Rishi Sunak and the decisions that led to the mortgage crisis, the massive rise in the cost of living. It's pretty smart because that's all anyone is really that concerned about. Because I think it was in Playbook, they were like, oh, there's a litany of attack lines for Sunak over like the Cass report or whatever. And it's like, there's no way people care more about the Cass report.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that they don't try it.
No, but actually Sunak didn't try it today, did he?
No, he didn't. I thought he was going to land us. Keir Starmer doesn't even know what a woman is.
Yeah, he fucking botched the last one.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
he's
he did,
going to steer away from that.
He's back in his office now, rocking.
I can't do it again.
God's sake.
I can't do it again.
I'm going to disagree with you about the link between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak.
Really?
Because, no, I'm going to agree with you.
Brilliant.
I'm going to say because that's what Sunak's trying to do with Starmer and Corbyn.
Mm-hmm.
So he's always been trying to make this, to keep this link between Corbyn and Starmer, and create this perception that Starmer is going to enact some of Corbyn's policies if he's elected into government, which anyone with their eyes open would be able to tell you that that is absolutely not the case, and is of quite serious disappointment to a lot of Labour members.
I suppose the difference is, or maybe it's actually a similarity, in even though Sunak was Liz Truss's opponent in the final leadership contest and really publicly spoke down her ideas, the Conservative Party still voted her in. They heard it and were like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be sick." Although Sunak himself didn't endorse it, the Conservative Party did, the Conservative government did, and so you can't really wash your hands of the actions of your immediate predecessor and
because what she
your
did,
party.
But what she did was conservative in the actual sense that the ethos of that party is small state, low taxes. That's exactly what she did. And there's this quite terrible groupthink that often goes on within the Westminster bubble, where there becomes an accepted line of thinking, and all reporting and all commentary sort of follows that train of thought. Now, if Truss had been approaching that leadership, when she was approaching that leadership contest and she was talking about low tax, a lot of MPs backed her on that because they thought, yes, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to reduce the burden. We want to reduce the state. Sunak is the antithesis of her, and is actually he's not a Tory. Actually, most of his policies aren't particularly conservative. I can't remember what the conclusion to this point was. Oh yeah, I think it's really unhelpful to sort of keep hammering her over these tax cuts and like laughing at her for it, because that's exactly what the party want to do, and they will do if they continue in government for long enough with a different leader. It's just the groupthink that makes us think that she was out of whack with everyone else.
I don't know if they will, because it would require someone like Simon Clarke to become leader.
But Simon Clarke, and there are other MPs, Danny Kruger as well, they all said that they agreed with what her ambition, but it was the manner in which she did it that was bad. So it was because she did it suddenly and she didn't actually take any advice or didn't bother listening to any of the advice that she would crash the economy. That's why it went wrong. But the impetus is something that all of the Tories want.
Yeah, but I suppose probably you'd like to think someone else would listen to the advice from the advisors, and they wouldn't do that again. Because if they do it again, Labour are probably going to lead the next government, so it'll be a little while until the Conservatives get back in to have another go.
But listen to what Sunak is actually saying at the dispatch box. So what he's saying to Starmer is, if you elect Keir Starmer, you're going to have skyrocketing taxes. This man is going to increase public spending, everything that Liz Truss didn't do, right? Liz Truss did the absolute opposite to that. So when Sunak is shouting that across the dispatch box, you should be seeing that as a forewarning that is what they would actually like to do, the antithesis of it. They want to do Liz Truss's policy.
Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, I understand.
I just have got really bad syntax today, sorry.
Really bad syntax?
Yeah.
No, you don't.
I can't quite get my thoughts together.
Can't get your thoughts together.
He is politically... He has moved himself away politically from Liz Truss. But actually, if you listen to the impetus of what he's saying to Starmer, he would do exactly the same as her if the opportunity arose.
I like how he always talks about the £900 less in tax.
It's shit, isn't it?
It's just ultimately not that much money.
No.
Which, is really just like saying the quiet part loud. Like, we have cut taxes by £900.
Yeah, but £900 would be significant if your rent hadn't gone up, your mortgage hadn't gone up, and then all of the, the cost to buy things hadn't gone up as well.
There's also I think people there's an appetite for higher taxes if it increases public services. At the moment, people are paying super high taxes and everything doesn't work. If things start to work and you're paying more taxes, you're like, oh, phenomenal.
Well, that's because, in theory, you would actually be saving money. Because at the moment, you know that you can't rely on a public service. So you have to be, you're forking out extra money. There are a lot of people who are, particularly people who are sort of 70 and older, if they want to get a hip replacement, a lot of them have to go private because it's simply not available on the NHS without a 10-year waiting list.
Yeah.
It's just not. And so, yeah, I think that they would rather, well, not that they pay tax, but hypothetically, you would rather pay a little bit more tax and get your healthcare
Yeah.
paid for.
I'll let you back on. Should we do another clip?
Go on then.
Mr Speaker, of course, where Gordon Brown was also correct was in stating that Scottish independence is not simply off the agenda. And indeed, those remarks were echoed just yesterday by the General Secretary of the Scottish Trade Union Congress, who stated that it remains an unresolved issue, Mr Speaker, before going on to state, and I confirm, and they may laugh at her, but she said, that can be a very dangerous place to end up in when you are not allowing people to express their wishes in a democratic manner. So may I ask the Prime Minister, does he welcome the fulsome, wholehearted and warm support of the Labour Party in denying the people of Scotland that opportunity to have a say over their own future?
Well, Mr Speaker, we did have a democratic vote on that topic, but what I would suggest to the SNP is that rather than obsessing about independence and indeed wasting time cracking down on free speech and trying to lock up J.K. Rowling, he should focus on what the people of Scotland actually care about: schools, hospitals, jobs and our new tax cuts.
So Stephen Flynn, like Sunak and Starmer, just spelling out, this is what the SNP wants to be talking about. This is what the SNP is for now. I think a problem that the SNP are having at the moment is support for independence is kind of still floating around the 50% mark, as it has done forever. Not forever, but you know what I mean, in recent years. And no, in a UCAF poll, the no vote had slightly overtaken it. I think it was 53 to 47. But for the first time recently, Scottish Labour have overtaken the SNP in Scottish polls. So independence is more popular than the SNP. So the SNP are just desperately trying to claw that vote back.
To attach themselves
to something that is quite popular.
Because it's not beyond reasonable doubt that, like, some voters will think, well, if Starmer's going to get in down there and I elect a Labour MP in my constituency, that's more helpful than...
Definitely, especially because independence isn't, I think it's floats somewhere between third and fifth biggest priority for Scottish voters. So if it's not on average a priority, then does it really matter? Like, especially in the Westminster context, does it really matter how many SNP people there are? Excuse me, how many SNP MPs there are in Westminster?
It's interesting to me that you say that it's that far down in priorities, because that reminds me, I was looking at some more in common research yesterday, and they were showing what's the key bits of, you know, what do voters care about, and the cost of living crisis is, if you're looking at this graph, cost of living crisis is here, and immigration, if this is the bottom of the graph, is sort of here. It's the space between the two is extraordinary. The gulf between the two. I always had it in my head, but I think because we talk about immigration all the time, I think of it as the most prescient issue that's on people's minds, and it's not. It really is entangled in this how do I pay for things question that people are asking. And I think because we've hammered the public, the media have hammered the public with this line that you can't afford things because of immigration, it seemed like it's higher up on the agenda than it actually is. Yeah.
And that speaks to, I was in Cumbria last week speaking to I was in the whitest place in Britain, and people there were very reasonable. They were like, oh, well, I don't really have a massive... I asked them first, what's your biggest priority at the moment? And they said infrastructure in the area, cost of living, reviving the town centre. No one said immigration off the top of their head at all.
It's so basic, isn't it? It's so obvious, glaringly obvious.
But it's also as well, it's easy to make an emotive issue. Like the cost of living crisis, there's no flashy kind of nothing-y policy. Like the Rwanda policy is a big flashy thing for people to look at. It's a solution that's actually not going to solve anything. But like, we have this big brand new idea that's going to solve everything, and we can talk about that forever without actually having to do anything meaningful about it. They can't really do that with the cost of living crisis because that's affecting people now. That's affecting people all the time.
Well, you something that you've got tangible evidence for every single time you buy something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Food has gone up though. Food has stayed quite high, hasn't it?
But good news, inflation's down.
No, but food has stayed quite high within that.
No, I know. I was being glib.
Oh, right.
Once again, as in like, inflation is down, but still inflation. Prices are still going to rise, just not as highly as...
Not as fast, yeah.
Yes, things are still going expensive.
We should get you a little glib button.
When I'm being glib.
Yeah.
Like like a shot collar.
Yeah. For me.
to train out with me.
Yeah.
I don't think it works when I have to keep saying that I'm being glib. No.
For listeners of the podcast today who aren't watching this, Ed is wearing a denim waistcoat.
No, it's not
With
a
a-
waistcoat.
Right? He's wearing a denim gilet. I don't know. What is
I
it?
describe it as a vest. But,
All right. Ed is wearing a denim vest,
Uh-huh.
waistcoat, and a white t-shirt. It's a very nice outfit.
Thank you.
But what's funny about it is that it's the day after the smoking bill passed the first stage in the Commons. And it looks like the sort of jacket you would wear that would have like lots of products lining the inside of it. So yeah, it looks like he's about to open up and sell a few 15-year-olds a couple of
Rizzlers.
fags. Yeah.
Or if you, those 15-year-olds, they can buy, if you're 15, you can't buy. Are they the first generation that won't be able to buy cigarettes? 2009.
Born 2009, yeah.
So if you're 15,
What's the cutoff? Does that mean that, like, do you think they're going like Scottish school years or English school
I think
years?
Scottish school years.
Do you think?
If it's by a year, it has to be.
I don't know, it's September 2009 or January is what I'm saying.
So when I'm 40, I'm going to have a really lucrative side hustle in selling like Vogues to 27-year-olds.
You know what is so totally bizarre about it? Whenever Labour have put forward a policy idea that they'd like to introduce after the election or their manifesto pledges, Sunak and Hunt start screaming at them about how on earth are you going to fund it? How are you going to pay for this? Where's that money going to come from? Everything is unfunded, Mr. Speaker. Well, why did no one ask him the question yesterday? What are you going to do with the black hole of tax that is now lost, that will be lost from smoking? It's a huge amount of tax.
Mm-hmm.
The tax actually outweighs what is spent by the NHS on treating people with smoking illnesses. Now, look, I'm genuinely not being a proponent for either side of it now. I actually promise you I'm not. I'm just saying the simple fact of it is that's going to be a huge black hole, and no one's asked the question of them of where are you going to recoup that? You know, like, are you going to...
I know how. They're going to legalise heroin
But anyway,
and tax that.
Okay, but on this point as well, the cost to the NHS. So there's always this huge figure that is bandied about the cost of smoking to the country, and two things are pulled together to create this figure. It's cost to the NHS and it's productivity. So someone very clever has worked out how many hours are lost in the UK economy every single year by people going out to have a cigarette, and they have pulled together a figure so how much that costs us in productivity. So when they're talking about this is how much it costs the country, they're talking about productivity costs, and I just think that's totally nuts, because that's like anything. Are we going to get into a stage where, I don't know, how much does it cost the country in productivity when Sean goes and gets a coffee at 11 o'clock? Like the time wasted there.
Sean doesn't go and get a coffee once an hour. I see he's a
Or going to the bathroom.
he's a non-smoker. I do think seeing people just get up from the desk and like stop working because they need to like take drugs. It's glib button.
But you could go and stand outside. No one's stopping you from doing that.
But there's so like you can't just the social pressure for that is like. It's like, oh, where can I go and just stand outside? Where's the standing and having a chill area?
You could light a cigarette and not smoke it.
But then I'd be inhaling the passive smoking.
Buy a
It's part of the
clove
problem.
cigarette.
That'd be insane. Just smoking like a clove cigarette.
I didn't say smoke it. I just said light it.
Light it and just hold.
Yeah. I just think it's
Got a
wild.
light?
I just think it's wild that for any other policy you have to bring forward a costing, and you have to cost it properly, and they haven't done that at all with this. How is that different? You've got at the same time, you've got Liz Truss and her unfunded tax cuts parading the broadcast studios, and we're all laughing at her going, she didn't even cost it. They didn't cost this one either.
But I suppose the hypothetical benefits to healthcare, to people's health, is
But I'm not being pro-smoking. I'm just laying out the inconsistencies in their arguments.
And I'm
because I'm genuinely not taking a partisan side here. I'm just telling you, fact, more tax comes in than the money spent on the NHS. Fact, more money is wasted on productivity than is spent by the NHS treating people with smoking illnesses. And so I just want to know, where are they going to recoup that money from?
Do you agree with the philosophy behind it?
Yes. I don't really know why we smoke. Like, I genuinely don't really get why we do it.
Yep.
Just as a disclaimer, I love smoking.
If you couldn't tell from any of our conversation.
But no, because that's not why I'm making those arguments.
I know.
It genuinely isn't. But it's sort of like, I think it's strange because I look at vapes and I think that they are so disgusting and so dangerous. And I think it's too late for me. I can quit now. I'm already addicted. But the idea that like a 15-year-old...
Did you say you can quit or can't quit?
I can, but I can quit and I'm already addicted. But I'm looking at sort of like, when I look at the vapes, I look at how pink and colourful and childlike they are. And 15-year-olds are smoking them, thinking that they're perfectly healthy from them. I don't think, this is not really about cigarettes, this discussion we've been having. It really is about vapes and regulating that market, because it's totally nuts that people think that that's safe for you to do. And because it doesn't have
flavours.
It doesn't have that smell to it either.
No.
So Gen Z are a bit more conscious about the smell of cigarette smoke, and so they think that this is fine.
Do you remember how lame vaping used to be? Like 10 years ago, when people had like that huge rig.
That's what my dad has, that big rig.
A huge. I think it's that, people used to make fun of people who vape all the time. They used to be kind of like neckbeardy.
It was quite. What's that game shop called?
CEX.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Quite CEX coded.
Do you know what I mean?
Heading down for a spin on the Nintendo 64 and playing some WoW with a vape.
But then I think about like the sugar tax, and I hate the sugar tax. I think it's a real infringement on your civil liberty, because what you're basically doing is, because there are, if you think about the entire proportion of the population, there's a small group of people who are making themselves extremely ill and costing the NHS a lot of money because they eat too much sugar. And it's meant that the entire country has had to pay a premium to aid that. And I think that's unfair. I guess that would be the argument for smoking.
I suppose also about like drinking. Drinking isn't good for you, and they've never ever proposed banning drinking or banning alcohol for anyone.
But they did, didn't they? I mean, like in Scotland, you can't buy it after 10 o'clock, isn't it?
Between 10 and 10, but it's not like, but anyone can still buy it.
No, but that's a curtailment of your...
Yeah, I suppose actually. But that is, I suppose, draconian, like fascist Scotland.
Yeah.
Where you can't call people slurs anymore.
I hated when they introduced even things like... So what I don't understand is, why doesn't the money go into educating people on the dangers of smoking in school, or the dangers of eating terrible food? Like, why do we not still do, sorry to sound like Miriam Cates here, but I think it's weird that we don't do food tech in every single school and teach children how to eat and to cook for themselves properly, and teach, everything in moderation, rather than just sort of throwing people out at 18 and then go,
not for you.
Yeah, and then just make laws so that they actually can't eat it or drink it or smoke it.
Yeah, I don't think you should smoke, kind of full stop, but I don't really, but I think it should be people's choice, and I think having a blanket ban is pretty mental, as in like you will have insane situations where like people, so someone is 41, your friend is 42, they can buy a packet of cigarettes and you can't. Like, it becomes just kind of farcical.
I would have been very pro the indoor smoking ban when that came in. I think that's actually disgusting that we ever did that.
Yeah.
Ever let people smoke inside a pub. And do you remember when if you read the CBI report from then, they're like, oh, all of these businesses are going to close. CBI are wrong on everything. They also said, They actually are. They also said that thousands of small businesses would close when you introduce the minimum wage. I mean, that's a mental take. That is an insane take.
What's a new thing they'll say?
There was some allegations of sexual harassment at the CBI, so I think they've been a bit quiet since then. Do you know what, CBI? Why don't you get your own house in order?
Absolutely. Before criticising my smoking restaurant.
Yeah.
Would you start a restaurant that's like, do you remember like this serial killer cafe?
Yes.
Just like, it's like cereal, but you get a vape with it as well?
There's a really speaking right by where the cereal cafe used to be.
Is that in Shoreditch?
Yeah, on Brick Lane. There's the most... Also, now that I'm thinking about that whole furore, it's really funny. I really don't think it mattered that they opened a cereal cafe there.
Oh, no, neither do I. It was really funny.
It was, yeah, people were like, this is one of the poorest areas in London. It's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Anyway, there's a really dystopian vape ad near where that used to be. And it's like a 3D vape that's coming off of the sign. It's insane.
And does it puff smoke?
It, like, literally,
That's sick.
it's... I'll try and take a picture of it for you tonight. It's huge.
Maybe vaping is cool.
Maybe
Vaping is cool. Did you want to touch on anything else from PMQs?
No, did you?
No, I think we've kind of covered it. Shall we? You mentioned dystopia there. Shall we discuss the dystopian EU?
Yeah, go on then.
So Nat Con is happening in Brussels at the moment, and there was a bit of a stooshy happened yesterday. Eva, would you like to catch us up on that?
The mayor of Brussels tried to close it down, tried to halt proceedings, and he sent the police in. And the organisers got a date at court. By the way, can you imagine this?
Yeah,
happening in the UK?
same day
court appearance. And it was overturned because people are allowed to express themselves peacefully. What was weird about it was that so they'd had to move venues a couple of times. So private companies were being sort of encouraged not to host the event.
Yeah.
And commercial business, do whatever you like. You don't have to host anyone that you don't want to. Back that completely. But what I don't understand is why they gave the license to the conference to go ahead in the first place, knowing that if the mayor knew that on the day, or at least on the days up to it, he would try to close it down. Don't license them, because you've given them the ultimate gift. I am the victim.
Yeah.
Everything bad happens to me.
These conferences, there was some. They talk about the far right. Well, I think far right figures were there, but when they talk about the far right being there, you imagine like skinheads and like it being like a rally of some sort. When in reality, it's like a think tank.
It's a bunch of dorks in a conference room.
Yeah, who are discussing pretty like heinous ideas. It must be said. And then
all bands today.
Yeah, like it's Orban. Orban is Philip Braverman. It's an absolute gallery of losers.
Yeah, and I think that, oh gosh, I've got a hair on my face. I think it almost feels like it was an inside job, because the PR of closing down what they term as a free speech conference is like the ultimate gift. They couldn't have begged for that level of publicity.
No. Most people have never heard of this thing before. Now, Farage will be on every single news channel talking about how the EU is shutting down free speech. And so what he said, Farage said yesterday, this is like, well, if anything has made up my mind about leaving the EU, it's this. And I was like, you've just now made your mind up about it. That was a long time coming, I think.
But I think that they're right to be angry about it. And I think that it would be very good for Suella Braverman to witness and to reflect and to come back to the UK and think, maybe that Police Crime and Sentencing Bill and the Public Order Act were a bit much.
Yep.
Maybe I shouldn't be so strict on protest laws here.
Bless you.
Sorry.
Bless you again. Yes, I wonder, do you think there's going to be a conversion into like, oh my, she finally rereads that bill and it's like, oh, that's what happened to me. I was cancelled. Did you see they smuggled in Miriam Case through the police line to a hero's welcome? Do you think this will cause some serious reflection from the Conservative Party about their attitude to protests and political opposition? No, I don't think so either.
Not.
No.
But But it should. It can't be free speech on your terms.
Yeah.
Which actually, ironically, is what they've been arguing about the left.
Yeah.
It's not even the left. People would like, when you think about the way that Suella spoke when she was Home Secretary about people who were protesting or spoke about people who were going on strike, both of those groups exercising their right to democratic process. And then the minute that she wants to say something, but she gets hauled up for it, she's like,
Oh, it's the EU.
Yeah.
We're not in the EU anymore, Suella. It was you that did that.
It was actually the ECHR that made her write that piece in that newspaper about the cenotaph.
It's the big woke EU. It's just ultimate publicity for them as well, because you will just get... It's now actually a boon to say you're like low level, not that famous. You have maybe a few thousand followers on Twitter, like what right-wing think tank wonk. Your presence at this, by definition, makes you more interesting. So you could use this to build a platform. So everyone who's at this will have the platform to build on, being like, I was the victim of cancel culture. I was just being common sense, actually.
Yeah.
And the woke mayor of Brussels tried to shut me
No,
down.
but not even woke, authoritarian. Mayor of Brussels.
Woke authoritarian. That's the worst kind. Do you have anything else to add?
I do not.
Excellent. Shall we wrap it up?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much for joining me, Ava, to discuss PMQs. And I think great news. Everyone's been asking where Ollie is. He'll be back next episode, I assume. Unless there's unless something dreadful happens.
Unless Ed.
I'm just saying, don't
does
come
an
into work
extra
tomorrow.
episode.
Tomorrow. Yeah, Ollie will be back, which would be nice.
Okay.
The three back together.
The three
Musketeers.
compadres.
Amigos. The three points of the triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other things, other types of three things are available.
What comes in a three that you like? Us,
the hosts of the PoliticsJOE podcast. If you could, please remember to like and subscribe to us on YouTube and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you next time.